It would seem as though.
Hi. That was weird. It just got like oddly quiet.
I know. It was screaming at me.
Oh, did you turn it down?
No.
No, it turned itself
Girl.
down? Did the poltergeist turn it down?
First of all, you guys, let me tell you how this is set up. She's sitting in front of a laptop, and I'm on the other side of it. So, yes, I turned it down.
Well, it could have been one of the studio techs. Maybe they thought it was too loud.
Oh, Johnny.
If you're going to mess with the controls
you're
in
fired.
the sound booth, you could at least tell us.
Yeah, fired. Give me my latte or whatever.
God.
I don't know.
Oh, my God, I want that.
I know. Can we just have like one studio tech who does literally everything? But mostly they just go get us coffee.
That would be good.
Yeah.
All the assistants and all the land.
Yeah, just the one.
Yeah.
Johnny. Even if that's not their name.
I know. Then we'll just call him that.
Yeah,
And
they're
he's
just Johnny.
My name is Jeremy.
I know. Whoever the hell
Jeremy.
is.
It sounded like you said Johnny the first day, so...
Girl, boy, baby, I don't care. Your name is Johnny now.
Yeah.
Because I can't be bothered to learn your name.
No, because that's too much work.
I'm tired already, so...
As entitled white women, we don't have to learn your name or learn how to pronounce it. No.
Jose, I'm like, your name is Josie? That's cute.
Yeah.
It's really cute. Josie?
I'm sorry. Can I just call you Joe? Because I can't be bothered to learn how to pronounce things.
I know, right? So, you know, my good friend Angel, my son, his name, his birth name is Jose, right? But his parents didn't put an apostrophe or an accent over the E. Yeah. So his family friends used to just make fun of him and call him Josie all the time. Or Jose, because his name is Jose. Yeah. So now he just
Josie and the Pussycats.
Josie, yep. It's just a little Chicano boy. I love that. And he has cats. Yeah, that's Angel. He just got a kitten.
So now he is Josie and the Pussycat.
He's Josie and the Pussycat. Singular. Mm-hmm.
Well, if he gets more.
I know. Yeah. I know. So yeah, little Josie. Josie Grosy.
I have got to share something that I wanted only to share this with you as we were doing this because I need your actual live reaction to this because it is so fucking funny.
Okay.
So last night was my night to read.
Love it.
And so as it goes, I read when it's my night. I read, and then when I'm done, Parker reads to me.
Okay.
And then he goes and gets his dad. He comes up. We sing to them. And then he goes back downstairs or whatever.
Yeah.
So I look over at my husband and I was like, do you have socks in your pocket? And he just looks at me and grins and I was like, what? And he goes, I was just waiting for you to finish that sentence. And I go, what?
Yeah.
He goes, do you have socks in your pocket? You're just happy to see me. And
yeah.
I was like,
that's where I was going.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
And then he leaves the room. And Parker looks at me and he goes, I know what that means. And I go, what? And he goes, I know what that means. He goes, boner.
Boner. Ah!
And I was like, oh, yes, that's exactly what that means. And good on you. And he goes, you know, because I have one every morning.
Oh,
okay. And I was like, okay, son. And he goes, do you want to hear a joke? And I go,
not really.
Okay. And he goes, I have 206 bones. But in the morning, I have 207.
Oh, my God.
I was like, oh, baby's first dirty joke.
Your son is fucking weird.
I was like, who tells their mother?
That's what I'm thinking.
Dirty jokes.
Also, what child isn't ashamed of their body? Like, I'm shook, you know? Mostly because he's just like, it's a thing that happens.
Yeah, I have a boner every morning.
What?
I know.
We don't talk about that. Go pray right now. Go talk to Jesus.
I know. I was just like, wow.
I know. Okay. This is too much.
I do love the fact that he's just like, yeah, that's just the thing that happens. And
I don't.
Yeah.
Stop it. I don't need to know. Stop it.
I don't need to know.
And I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
I love the fact that he is so just free and easy about his body.
Sure.
He's not ashamed at all. Because that is not how I grew up. No. I grew up embarrassed and ashamed about everything.
Well, also, though, I mean, again, the society we live in, right? But, like, I feel like him just being like, boner. I have a boner. Like, stop! I'm grossed out.
Hey, Mom, do you want to hear a boner joke? I don't think that I do.
No, I'm pretty sure I don't.
But I did laugh out loud.
I'm sure you did. I also just don't think children should have genitalia until they're adults. Do you know what I mean?
Right. I think it should actually be in a vault somewhere. Yeah. And then once they've like passed tests and stuff, they can check it out.
They could all just wear chastity belts. Just metal fucking underwear forever. Because honestly, I don't want to hear about you discovering your body. Not ever, not once. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It makes me... I'm glad that you feel so free and open. Same. But I don't...
I know, yes, the other day we had to have a sex conversation.
Oh.
And I don't even remember what brought it about. Oh, yeah. Wait, we were watching...
Haven't you guys had the sex conversation like a million times?
Yeah, we've had many. But it was about... what was it about?
I don't know.
It was something about... it was, because we listened to the radio in the morning. It's like the Am I the Drama kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. Or Am I the Asshole or whatever. And it was, Am I the Asshole because I inadvertently scared off my sister's fiance by saying, I'm glad that you're okay with never having children. And he was like, wait, what? Because the sister had ovarian cancer when she was very, very young. And so she can never have children. Yeah. But she had not mentioned that.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, that's kind of a big thing that should have been mentioned right up front.
It's not your business, bitch.
But it's not your business to say. And whatever.
Sure.
And so Parker and I had a discussion about that. And I was like, well, and he said, well, so I'll have to mention right up front if I get married or whatever, that I cannot produce children. And
Parker?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
I'm sure he can. He shouldn't. Because of his genetic issue.
Copy.
He has a 50% chance of passing that on to someone else.
Okay.
And because of what it is one of those umbrella things that it's like, or spectrum things that it's like, could be nothing, could be everything.
Yeah.
Because he has virtually nothing from it, whereas his older half-sisters are so severely affected by it.
Yeah.
So I was like... Right, so you either, you should anyway, always wear a condom when having sex. But possibly when you are old enough, just consider having a vasectomy.
Yeah.
So that it isn't even a thing.
Yeah.
But still wear a condom so you're not
giving
sexually
diseases.
transmissible.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. But we had to have that whole conversation. But we've been having the conversation since he was very, very young of why he should never produce children. And
I didn't know that. I don't think I knew that. Maybe I did. Yeah. I probably did.
And he's just like, oh yeah, I never would. If I decide I'm going to have children, I'll just adopt them because there's so many children out in the world and blah, blah,
Honestly.
blah. And Grace said, yeah, I don't want children.
Yeah, gross.
Ever.
Yeah.
I don't want to have them. I don't want to adopt them.
That's so funny.
I don't want them.
That's so funny because she's the one who's like, I want to work in a preschool.
I know.
Work with kids.
I know. And she had just said the day before, do you think I should work around? I love children. And then on this day, whatever had changed, I don't know, the winds had blown differently that day because she was like, children. I don't want my own, don't like them, don't want to be near them, don't want...
And then that bitch is shocked when I openly say I don't like children. And she's like jaw dropping, gasping.
How dare you?
I know. Like, we're in the same boat, bitch.
But it was so funny because she's like, I'm never going to have children.
Oh, God.
Well, that's probably a good choice.
Yeah, that's good on ya.
But it was just so funny. It's like... children. Who wants them?
Yeah, that's so interesting.
I'm glad that you have come to that conclusion. It will change 400 times, but still, I will remind you periodically of the day you were like, I never want
children. Hate them all.
Yep. Hate them all. Children are terrible. I had a friend when I was in my early 20s. Her name was Cindy. Cindy looked like Elvira.
Ooh, oh my God!
Yeah, Cindy in her normal everyday life looked like Elvira in full Elvira drag.
I'm obsessed. Yeah,
she had her hair was cut kind of like Elvira's, but it was purple.
Okay.
Yeah, Cindy hated children.
Oh God.
Cindy, from the time she was very, very young, was like, never ever do I want children. I don't like them. I don't want to be around them. I would be a terrible mother because Cindy had a terrible mother. And so she knew she'd be an awful mom. And so from when she was in her early 20s, she went to a doctor and said, just tie my tubes. Yeah. I don't even want to accidentally get pregnant.
And they were like, no.
And they said, we can't do that. And she was like, why? Well, because someday, and she goes, I hate children. Mm-hmm. And they were like, but you might change your mind. What if you get married and your husband, she goes, what the fuck does he have to do with anything?
Yeah.
And she goes, I don't even like men.
Yeah.
And she goes, I'm not going to get married. I don't like men. I don't want babies. Tie my tubes. And they wouldn't do it.
Yep.
Which I think is such bullshit. It's like, my body, my choice, man.
Girl, honestly.
But granted, this was the 80s. But I don't think anything's changed there.
No, it doesn't. You have to either have children or be married, have that conversation, or something. There has to be
or you have to have some horrible thing happen to your body.
Yes, that is it. And doctors will not tie, if you are assigned female at birth, they will not tie your tubes, especially if you're young, if you don't have children and you're unmarried. That's so fucking weird to me, right? Like, really, you won't tie, but a man can go, it's because it's reversible. You can go and get a vasectomy at 18 and no one gives a shit. Everyone's like, okay, go have all the sex now. You know what I mean? Right. It's weird as fuck to me.
Go do your thing and there's no repercussions.
No spreading of any seed, please. Ugh. I hate it, girl. Yeah. I fucking hate it.
I don't understand. Listen, I have a letter.
Did you read it first? Before?
I did. I read the entire thing.
Okay, I love it.
I read from top to bottom. There was no, please don't read this on the air.
Okay.
I did. I told you I got another letter from Lori Lee saying that she laughed about the fact that I was a dumbass and read her letter.
Yeah.
You know? So I was like, sorry, Lori Lee. Sorry that I'm dumb and don't know how to read. It turns out I actually do know how to read.
You just choose not to?
I chose not to. This letter is from my beautiful sister, Linda.
Oh my God. Hi, Linda.
It says, I love that you talked about this, and this being Dia de los Muertos.
Oh, yeah.
Michael asked me about last week if I had any pictures of Oma. Yeah, tons of them. Why? He said they were going to celebrate with the girls this year, so that they could learn about their family that had passed on. He invited us over that night to share memories and to hang out. We had pictures of Mom, Robert's mom, and his, Robert's grandmother, who had passed when Michael was about 5. Now, Robert is Linda's oldest.
Okay.
No, Robert is... I'm sorry. Michael is Linda's oldest.
Right.
Robert is his father.
Copy.
Ugh, my brain sometimes.
She old.
Right. Blah, blah, blah. I said that. Of course, he included some of the pets that the girls knew and miss. He put out food and drink that each of the people liked and had candles all set up. It was hilarious to see the box of Sunset Blush that was there for Mom.
I love it.
And KFC mashed potatoes for Robert's grandmother who had no teeth. After hearing you ladies talk about the pictures of family members on the walls and kids not knowing who they were, I tested all of my kids about the pictures on my walls and was sad to learn that they had only guesses for some people, including my grandma, who I feel I've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
I hope this is something we continue and add to as the table gets bigger.
Yeah.
As always, I love listening to you every week. You always give us food for thought.
Okay.
Love you so very much. Keep it up.
Aww.
We love you,
Love
Linda.
you. I know. That's fun. You know, I, for a number of years now, have wanted, like, an ofrenda, which is Mexican culture, where you put, like, for me, it would be, like, pictures and urns and, like, trinkets of people who have passed. So it's just, like, a constant altar of honor for people that you've loved. Because, girl, I have... considering I've, witnessed like half people in my life I know die,
nice.
I have lots of little pictures, or, when my friend Sydney died when I was 16, I have this...
I remember it well.
Oh, I was devastated. Her dad knew her close friends, and so we got to go to her house, and he was like, you can go through her room, and you can take stuff that's, important to you. And I remember the one thing that I remember taking for sure is this little rock that I still have. And it's a rock that's shaped like a heart that she just found one day, and she painted initials on it. And I think they're her initials, but I don't know why, but it was just like so cute to me. Yeah. And like, it was like one of the first things I commented on, whatever. So I have that still. So that would be like on my ofrenda, but like just framed pictures or just candles, things that people who passed loved, like Annabelle would be on it. I think Annabelle's actually getting her own shelf.
As she should.
So, yeah. By the way, as you know, I got her Ash's home.
Her cremains, yeah.
Yeah, and her little paw print. And it's all very sweet, but I was like, oh, God. Like, 1 week later, just rip that wide open again, please. So, yeah.
You know, when it comes time that there's no longer that one sad little chicken left in the chicken house, we should turn one whole end of it into an ofrenda.
Oh my God, we so should. That. Yeah.
I would love that.
After we bleach that bitch the fuck out.
Sure, yeah. I was just going to tell you something I completely forgot. Well, but we do certainly have enough cremains for like a whole crematorium out there.
Oh, yeah, girl. It's our mausoleum.
A mausoleum, yeah. It's crazy.
Do you guys want to come see the mausoleum? We're just going, there's like death.
Here we are, surrounded by death.
Yep.
When I had just been with T for probably months, we went to visit a friend of his who, I was not a fan favorite.
Sure.
He was in his early 20s and still lived with his parents, and that was not the issue. I don't care.
Yeah.
But he'd lived with his parents his whole life. Same house.
Interesting.
And there's a reason I tell you that, because it is important to the story. So we'd walked into the living room, and much like this, there was tons of pictures.
Sure.
And I looked at one of the photos, and I was like, wow, whoever that is, I assumed it was his dad.
Yeah.
Because the family resemblance was strong.
Sure, okay.
And I was like, who is this in this picture? Because I would assume that's probably your dad. And he goes, I don't know. I said, what? And he goes, I don't know. I don't know who any of these people are. I'm sorry, you've lived in this house your entire life, and you have no idea who any of these people are? And he goes, no, why would I know?
That's so weird.
Because you've lived here your whole life. You have no curiosity about who any of these people are?
That's super weird to me.
No. That was just like...
Shook.
What? I couldn't even fathom it.
Mm-hmm.
Because from the time
I think you're going to say the same thing I was about to say. Continue.
From the time I was little, when I would go visit my grandma, I wanted to know who everybody was in every picture, in every photo album, in every picture on the wall, in everything. You know, it's like, who's that? And that'd be, well, that's cousin so-and-so.
And here's the story.
Even though I didn't know cousin so-and-so, it was like, okay, now I know who that is.
But you also would get context, right? Because I was going to say the very same thing. I remember very young, my whole life, going through photo albums with grandma or with you, or, looking at pictures of people I didn't know. And they were older, but it was really... Or, like, seeing, like, Bruce and Sandy when they were younger. Or whatever. It was really fascinating as a kid to see, like, this whole progression of life. But I was, too, very much like, who's that? But Grandma, too, would just tell a story about them. Yeah. Oh, that's Uncle whoever. Here's a story, right? And so you got to learn context of your family, and you got to learn... And this is, like, the whole word of mouth passing down tradition. You got to learn the lives of people. Right. And I think that's real... In the lives of your ancestors. It's fascinating. I love it. But so it's weird to me that people are like, this person? I don't fucking know. Who's that person? I don't know. Why don't you know? And
just because this wall, I mean, mostly it's just very recent generations. But my children know who everybody on this wall is. They know who these old people are, and they are multiple generations back.
Yeah.
Who's that? That is T's father's best man at his wedding.
Okay, I assumed, but we don't know him.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
But I know who he is.
Sure.
But I don't care.
Yeah,
I know who he is. So when my grandmother, I was thinking about when you were saying about when Sydney died.
Yeah.
When my grandmother was getting ready to pass.
Yeah.
She told me, she goes, I want you to go back into my bedroom, and in the closet there are boxes of photos. Goes, just go through, take what you want. Now, had I been smart, I would have just taken the boxes of photos. All of them. But what I did is I went through and I picked out ones that I wanted, and which was like probably about a shoebox full.
Sure.
But there was like several like orange size boxes full, and I knew nobody other than my grandparents and my parents, my mom. But, then I was like, okay, Grandma, who's this and who's this? And wrote names. And the funny thing about my grandma is she wrote on the front of her pictures instead of the back.
Interesting. Okay.
And so the name was actually written on the person.
Oh.
So it'd be like, this is Mary and this is so-and-so. Now, I didn't always have context. Who's Mary?
Yeah.
Or who's who.
Because that's not a very common name.
Right. But I love that. I've always loved looking at people's pictures. Mm-hmm. Like, if, like, say Gavin brought over a family album. It was like, hey, you want to look at family? I'd be like, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I want to know everybody in your life.
Yeah.
Even generations past, even people I'll never meet. I don't care.
Oh, yeah.
I find that fascinating.
Great. Well, and I
don't know why, but I've always been that way.
I do love that because we're very similar. Shocking. But
that is shocking.
When I was at Gavin's dad's house in April, his dad's house is, first of all, stunning. It is huge and beautiful. And it's like in the section where like Santa Monica meets Beverly Hills meets Brentwood. Like it's all of... It's
so impoverished.
Yeah, he's very poor. But it's beautiful. And there are pictures everywhere and stuff everywhere. And so I went around being like, who's that? Who's that? But some of them I'm like, oh, that's you. Chunky little bright blonde blue-eyed boy. Like, his graduation picture is hysterical. He's thick, full fucking beard. His hair is like washed out blonde and his eyes are like bright blue and he's fucking screaming at the top of his lungs. It's really cute. But yeah, I love it.
I was surprised to find out he was an FFK.
What did you
Former fat kid.
Oh, I was like, what the fuck did you say to me about my man? Yeah, he was a fat boy for most of his life. Yeah. It wasn't until I think a few years ago, I think after he sobered up, is when he started to like take his health more serious.
But anyway, you were saying, I'm sorry.
No, that's whatever. But just going around and looking at everyone being like, I don't know who any of these tall ass white people are, but tell me about them, And there's a couple stores, a lot of vintage stores or like antique kind of stores have people's pictures. Like the photo album. There's a store on North Mississippi that's really kitschy. It's cute. I like it. You can buy like classic ornaments. Those like, that are really fine glass.
Like Christopher Radko?
Yeah. They're really like delicate.
Yeah. I hate those.
Me too. But sometimes they're
because
nostalgic.
I'm afraid of them.
Yeah, I have a couple though because I think they're precious, right? I think that they're cute, nostalgic looking. But anyway, they have a whole fucking like bowl of just people's photos. And they're like antiquated though. They're like older. But I said, this is cool as fuck. Like, I don't know any of these people, but watch me put them in an album and make up stories for them.
Absolutely.
That's your Aunt Johnny, and this is your Uncle Johnny, and their son, Johnny.
Because they weren't creative people. No. None of them finished school, so they could spell one name.
Well, Uncle Johnny and Aunt Johnny both just needed to find a partner named Johnny, and guess what?
They did. Luck, as luck would have it.
I know. They showed in. Yeah. So I get that. I get the... It's also just like looking at history. You know what I mean? Even though it's like a personalized little pocket of someone's history, I think history is fascinating in general.
Yeah.
So getting to see it, one person removed or whatever is really cool.
I agree.
But yeah, so I'm with you. Maybe...
Speaking of history... That's what we're talking about today.
No, we're not.
We're talking about history.
No.
We're talking... Because it is now officially...
Native American History Month.
Yes. Native American History Month.
Yeah.
The Indigenous peoples.
No, go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, my daughter asked me the other day, she said... she asked me specifically, I'm trying to think of how she said it. Basically, like, what was it like here before... the colonizers arrived. And I said, well, funny you should ask, because one of the things I looked at was like how many indigenous people, not tribes, but just people.
Okay.
There were 50 million
in the U.S. total.
In the complete, North America.
Okay.
There were 50 million.
That's a lot of people.
Indigenous people.
Yeah.
There are now 9
million.
Currently, 9 million.
9 people. Yeah.
9 people.
Yeah.
50 million.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the things, like 90% of indigenous people were wiped out with colonization.
But that was hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and that's how little it's come back. Because they wiped out so many people. And so I said this to her, and she's not one to always grasp the importance of things. And I said, 50 million people... And now, all these hundreds of years later, there's only 9 million. And she was like, that's terrible. And I was like, exactly.
Yeah.
And before that happened, there was somewhere between 300 and 500 spoken languages here.
Right. Yeah.
They don't know exactly.
Sure.
They know it was more than 300, possibly up to 500. And most of those languages have been lost.
Well, okay, and let's talk about it. And here's why. Because currently in the United States, there are like 400, and 90 something federally recognized tribes. Okay? Those are the only the ones that are federally recognized. And there's another like 500 tribes that are not federally recognized. And as you know, because we went to that powwow a couple of years ago, there are tribes that like we are very not close to, like maybe we know them, but that we are close in proximity to, that we've known of our entire lives, that are still not federally recognized.
There are 574 federally recognized tribes.
Okay, so then because it's close to 1,000 total, or it is 1,000 total tribes. I don't know how many are not federally recognized. It's like 4 something maybe. My point is, the Chinook tribe on the Oregon coast, which, don't they have a casino? Yeah. They're not federally recognized.
No?
No.
Oh.
Isn't that fucking crazy? Because remember we went to that powwow that was in Vancouver?
Yes.
And the tribe came out and talked about, or a tribe member came out, and they were Pacific Northwest tribe, and they talked about how they were not federally recognized yet. And a lot of it has to do with, like, the government, right? But also, sometimes because all the land was taken away from Indigenous people, when you try to parcel that land back out to Indigenous people, if someone already has it, that tribe is like, nor. Like, we don't want to give you our land. We've already had it taken away once. Like, we're not going to give it away for free. Right. But yeah, that's crazy, right? So no wonder so many languages have been spoken. That makes fucking sense.
Well, there's also a little thing about that, too. But I'm going to just read you this little blurb. Of the 574 federally recognized tribes, 229 of those tribes are in Alaska.
Oh, okay.
Which I thought was really interesting. That 229 of them, yes, and Alaska is gigantic.
Sure.
Yes. But I also find it interesting, because I've been learning a lot about Greenland.
Yeah.
Because I just find it fascinating that the indigenous people of Alaska, many of them made their way through Canada and eventually to Greenland.
Okay.
And this has nothing to do with that, but one of the things I learned is evolution. Because one of the questions someone asked is why the indigenous people have the kind of Asian hooded look to their eyes. Mm-hmm. And the lady I follow, her name is Q. Okay. It's called Q's Greenland.
Yeah.
She said because through evolution, they developed that hooded eye to protect them from sun blindness. Yeah. Snow blindness.
Right.
Because of the brightness of the sun hitting the snow, that it just protects them from. And it was like, it just happened over the years of evolution. So I thought that was really interesting.
Super fascinating to me.
California is the second highest with 109 tribes.
Okay.
These federally recognized tribes have government-to-government relationships with the United States, like other sovereign nations. But many tribes do not have federal recognition, mm-hmm. which means they're ineligible for government programs.
Yep. Isn't that awful?
Yeah. As of 2020, 66 tribes had received state recognition in 13 states. Yeah, it's crazy to me. The other thing is with the language stuff.
Okay, interesting.
Is that they were forced to assimilate.
Okay.
Which because we've talked about that.
Yeah. And assimilation is genocide, by the way. Continue.
Yeah. It was the... Oh, God. I'm trying to think of what it's called. It was the Indian Education Act?
Okay, yep.
No, the Indian Education Act was in 1972, which permitted tribes to teach their own languages.
Right.
Because... I'm sorry. I lost the thing that I found. It was initially when the children were taken from the tribes and taken to the schools and stuff to when they tried to basically erase their culture. They were trying to make sure that they didn't have their own language mm-hmm. and that they didn't have no culture, no language, so they could Christianize them and Americanize them and whatever. It wasn't until 1972 that they were like, okay, you can go back to teaching them their culture, because they'd wiped out so much culture that a lot of it was forgotten.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until 1990 that Congress passed the Native American Language Act, which provides support for Native American language preservation and revitalization.
Yeah.
That was just a minute ago.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things.
Right, girl. Well, and so there was also, what is it called? I don't remember what it's called, but it was, I think in the 70s, because for the longest time, tribes doing like ceremonial, religious, kind of their practices of their culture was banned. It was banned and they couldn't do it. And no tribe, no native person could do any of it. And then in like the 70s, it was like they were allowed to do their rituals again, their ceremonies again. Yeah. And that's why a lot of them are allowed to use like ayahuasca or whatever it is, like whatever psychedelic.
Yes.
Right. But they're allowed to do beading and making whatever, dream catchers or, headdresses. They can do this again starting in the 70s. That's why there's such like backlash for people who are like buying white sage and burning it, or learning to be like a Native American, like maybe from a Native American, or watching on YouTube and then selling the shit. You know what I mean? By the way, that's illegal. And it's also, there are things that are illegal that people don't really realize. Like owning an eagle feather, if you are non-native, is illegal. Full stop. Illegal. Huh. Yeah. It doesn't even matter if a native person gave you the feather. If you can't prove you're native, it's a pretty high crime to own like a bald eagle feather.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So think about the indigenous tribes that have like full headdresses with eagle feathers. They're not in trouble because indigeneity, it's right. Yeah. It's crazy. I also, sorry, continue.
Well, no, I found the paragraph I was looking for.
Okay.
Because it says, North America was home to a huge number of spoken languages prior to colonization. More than 300 and as many as 500. However, and here's the part I was looking for, many of these languages have disappeared as a result of the assimilation policies by the government. In 1868, President Ulysses S. Grant, piece of shit, by the way, declared, "In the difference of language today lies 2/3 of our trouble. Their barbarous dialect should be blotted out and the English language substituted." So, boo. Beginning in the 1800s, Native Americans were displaced from their communities and moved onto reserves, and children were taken to Indian boarding schools and educated in English. And it wasn't until 1972 when Congress passed the Indian Education Act. So that was, as you mentioned, genocide.
Yeah.
Well, plain and clear. It was just genocide.
Well, and that's the thing. That's genocide for sure. But, okay, when you are expecting a culture or a group of people to assimilate into like whatever mainstream culture is, you are asking them to leave their heritage, their beliefs, their families, their traditions, and become what you are. So, for example, in the United States, that was, and I will talk about this tribe because I can. The Cherokee people were one of the first tribes that were cool with Europeans, right? So lots of them. And, not all Cherokee people had long hair. Not all Cherokee men had long hair. Lots of them, depending on the tribe you were from, lots of them had, like, shaved heads with, like, kind of like a mohawk or, like, a little...
But what about the Cherokee princesses?
I'll punch you in the face.
Sorry about it.
But they assimilated. So they lost a ton of their culture. And a lot of the reason they assimilated is because the U.S., what is now the U.S., took that land and then was parceling it back out to indigenous people. But only indigenous people that were following the rules, right?
Oh, right.
So, but when you assimilate and you lose all that culture, what is genocide? Genocide is the complete extinction of a culture. So if everyone in this tribe just decides to assimilate into European whiteness, first of all, you'll never be white, right? Like,
right.
White people will never see you as white. You'll be civilized, and that's racism. But if they all assimilated, then what happens to their tribe? It no longer exists. That's genocide, right? Because a lot of people will be like, well, assimilation, like, you should assimilate into culture. That big lie that we're told that the United States is some melting pot, it could be in theory, but everyone's too racist and ignorant and xenophobic for us to actually have a melting pot. And because what happens is to have a melting pot is that everybody in the culture needs to bend, right? We all need to bend a little bit. We need to share our culture. We need to experience it. That's not what happens in the United States.
No, because it starts when folks, I mean, like, think about just Ellis Island. Mm-hmm. When folks get to Ellis Island and they say, my name is,
Johannes Schmittengeister.
And they're like,
how about John Smith?
That's too long, and I can't pronounce that or spell it. So we're going to change that.
Yeah.
And now we'll make it something much more easily spoken or spelled. And you're now John Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's so funny. A play I was in 5th grade, there was a kid named Johannes Schmittengeister, and he got to Ellis Island, and they said, that's too hard. How about John Smith? And he said, sounds good to me. So we did that whole play.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So what I was saying about the Chinook tribe, and this is just one tribe, Pacific Northwest, though. They were federally recognized under Clinton. 18 months after that, when Bush was elected, he rescinded that. So the Chinook tribe was no longer federally recognized. And so
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so the Chinook Indian Nation consists of 5 different bands. So I was reading who isn't recognized, but it's Clatsop, it's Wakiakam, it's Cathlamet, Willapia, and Lower Chinook. But it's these 5 tribes that are not federally recognized. And the other issue is that these policies are pitting natives against each other. And like I was saying earlier, it has to do with land. So even if you get federally recognized, does it matter? Because being federally recognized is saying that your tribe is sovereign. You're a sovereign nation within the United States.
Right.
Because reservations, tribes are that. They make their own rules, essentially.
Right.
Police don't have any enforcement. They don't have any jurisdiction on reservations. Right? Anyway. But so you say, okay, you're federally recognized. But the land that is your ancestral land is no longer yours, and another tribe owns it. So then what happens? The tribe that was just federally recognized is like, great, but now we have no fucking land. So then they go into arbitration, they go into discussion with other tribes to try and get some of their land back. But the tribes that have the land are not going to be like, sure, take this land. Because their land has already been taken by the government and given back, So it causes this whole, and that's the problem. Right? Indigenous ideals about land ownership is very different than what we know from Europeans. White people and Europeans are like, oh, I bought this parcel of land is mine, I own it, right? Indigenous people were more about stewardship. They were more about living with Earth and with nature, not on top of it, right?
Right.
And so, and like, think about the Plains Indians, lots of them who went, they did a lot of hunting. There were, each, like the Crow and, the Blackfeet, whatever. They had their own tribal lands, but then there was like communal hunting ground that everyone hunted on because that's where that's where the buffalo roamed, or that's where whatever they were looking for was, right? And so they had this communal space that they all would use, and that was like no man's land, and that was, kind of truce zone, right? And yeah, Indigenous people battled, but they didn't battle over shit like ignorant bullshit like white people, or mostly just like Americans in Western culture. They were battling over, pushing territory. But the one thing people want to say is like, oh, well, they, took prisoners, they enslaved other tribes. Do you know that is unsustainable when you are like a sustenance farmer, right? When you are farming and you're foraging and you're gathering and you're hunting for your tribe of people, to have prisoners just means you're feeding and taking care of somebody else and they're not doing anything. Yeah. So people who were taken often, and this isn't always, of course, but when tribes battled and one tribe won, often they would take quote unquote prisoners, take some of the loser tribes. Yes. But they would assimilate them into their tribe, right? So they would become a cog in the wheel. They become a part of the tribe. They would help cook or hunt or raise children or what the fuck ever. But they weren't just sitting...
Right, being a prisoner.
In the brig. Yeah, they weren't just being a prisoner.
Which is what happened to Sacagawea.
Oh, yeah. And could you imagine being an Indigenous person, specifically an Indigenous person who was raised tribally, and then you're taken by white people, first of all, and then you're imprisoned, and you don't have any notion of imprisonment, not in that kind of sense. How maddening. And your life is nature, and now you're put in a box. Like, I couldn't fucking imagine. Ugh. But anyway, yeah. So what I looked up also is that there are 400 and something, there's a lot of unrecognized tribes. It's like 409 non-federally recognized tribes.
That's crazy.
So there's 1,000 tribes in the United States now. There probably were more, but there's 1,000 tribes, but there's some that are not recognized at all. And sometimes it has to do with like, you need to have proof that this tribe has existed from treaty time until now, from when the moment treaties were
right.
signed.
Right.
And some people are like, oh, it has been. But, like, looking at Oregon, there are a number of tribes. And interestingly enough, a lot of them are Cherokee, which I was like, Cherokee people are not, they're not technically from anywhere near here.
Right.
They're from the Southeast Woodland, bitch. That's, like, Georgia. So, that's really interesting. And it's, I don't know, just, like, recognize all of them. What the fuck is wrong with you people? You know what I mean?
Well, what the fuck is wrong with them is if they recognize them, then they have to give them some rights. And they might have to give them some money.
Yeah.
Because they would have to go, well, you know, we screwed you over too.
Yeah.
So, sorry about it, and I guess we owe you something. And it's a tricky little thing there because, you know, it's the whole thing that has also happened for years and years with the African American community because, you know, with restoration and, you know, whatever. It's like reparations.
Yeah.
It's like, well, let's face it. You know, we stole your ancestors and we abused and murdered about. And so probably, yeah, we owe you something.
Yeah. Well,
but you have to prove where you were harmed and how. But you know, it's like it'll never happen.
It won't happen.
It won't. And this to me is kind of along the same lines. It's like we're making it so difficult.
Yeah.
That they made it difficult for the ones who actually got anything.
Yeah.
But it was like you have irrefutable evidence for the ones that actually got something.
Yeah.
And they don't get much, by
No,
the
of
way.
course not.
And so people who go, oh, these Indians just get all this free money from the government. No.
Oh my God, I want to talk about that for a second.
First of all, it's not a lot.
Yeah.
And they don't, these reservations are not like some, you know, great place.
It's not a resort.
No.
Mm-mm.
It is not.
No, and I watched, you know, because I was in school during most of the pandemic. I went to school, it started in 2020. And, you know, a lot of classes I've taken, because it is so social oriented, has to do with identity. And I chose to take a lot of things that had to do with gender and race and indigeneity. And I had to watch this documentary that talked about tribes during the pandemic and how they were not being helped at all. And so people, like grassroots organizations and indigenous tribes, had to take care of each other. And they were creating like checkpoints into reservations, being like, we're taking your temperature, you have to put a mask on, like, or you go home. Like, you can't come into our reservation. We're already at risk. And like, you know, think about, you know, I'm going to relate it again to African American or Black folk, is, you know, how there is that history of distrust from Black people to the medical community because of all the horrible shit the medical community has done to be like, oh, experimented on Black people. Well, like, imagine going to an indigenous tribe, going to a reservation where there's elders in a tribe and you have fucking COVID. I'm sorry, is that not the Trail of Tears all over again? Is that not you handing them a blanket full of smallpox, bitch? You're going to infect them with a disease?
Yes.
Because you want to be on their land? Like, that's so dumb to me. People talking about, this is what I was going to say, indigenous people getting all this money. Do you know why the whole idea started of like, oh, well, my grandmother was a Cherokee princess, and everybody says they're Cherokee, and everyone is like, my grandmother was some royalty of Native people? It's because during the time of colonization and, you know, indigenous people were they were being gifted land, parcels of land called reservations, and they were getting money, and they were getting these things, yes, but it was, again, minute in comparison to having the wealth of land, right?
Right.
But these white colonizers would see, oh my God, those bitches are getting money. So, but why are they getting money? Because they're Native. So these white people would say, well, my grandmother was Cherokee. My grandmother was a Cherokee princess. And that's how that whole thing fucking started. You know what I mean? Because it's still said today. People still say that shit today. Well, I'm Cherokee, or my grandmother was a Cherokee princess, which makes my blood fucking boil. But it was just a way for Europeans to claim land that wasn't theirs because they saw natives getting it, and how unfair.
How unfair that the people who originally owned that land that got stolen from them might want it back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Rude.
I know, girl.
Rude.
I know.
Yes, I remember that when I met that dumb ex-boyfriend of yours, and I referred to my grandmother as being indigenous, and he was like, oh, let me guess, she was a Cherokee princess. no fuckwad. She was a dirt farmer in Montana.
Yep.
Yeah, she was pretty highfalutin that one.
I know. Well, and
with her 15 children and her little shack that had no windows, and
she did great,
and her no electricity, and yeah, she was, yeah.
You know, I find it's embarrassing because, like, after, like, finding out that my grandfather is Indigenous, that's great. And then looking more into his history and figuring out where these people were born and where they're from, what tribes they were from. A lot of them were from Cherokee tribes, but I often refuse to tell people that. You know what I mean? Because I'm not trying to be the problem.
Because your great-grandpa was a Cherokee princess.
Yeah, my great-grandfather. Well, or my, yeah. And so I often will just use, like, the Indigenous name for themselves opposed to Cherokee, because that's not their Indigenous name.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I find I just don't want that conversation.
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
I don't want to talk about it. It's just irritating.
Indeed.
As fuck. So, I'm currently in my final class, and this has to do with Indigenous people. I'm the most unmotivated I've ever been in my entire fucking life, right? I have weeks left.
Well, some shit has been going on.
Yeah, girl, I'm tired. I don't want to. I can't care. And I'm kind of struggling because I have to write this research paper, okay? And it has to be feminism through the lens of social media, okay? So it could be anything. It could be literally anything. I have to choose a social media app, and I have to choose a discussion of feminism and analyze it. Well, I don't know what to do. I was going to use the hashtag, like, trans rights or human rights and look at that and see. My first question was, does this create acceptance or does it push further division? Right? Using the hashtag. Okay. But then, so I did this whole proposal, and my professor was like, you do a really good job of explaining stuff, but you need to narrow it down. It's, like, far too broad. And I said, okay. All so I'm having a hard time doing that. So I'm going over other ideas that I could write about. Because I don't want to write about the same basic, boring feminist shit, right? I want to apply feminism in the lens of feminism to other things. So one, I was like, well, I already wrote this paper once about trans men. You know what I mean? I could look at the trans man experience through the lens of feminism. Fascinating. But then I was like, why don't I talk about murdered and missing Indigenous women? Because hashtag MMIW, which is murdered and missing Indigenous women, is a huge hashtag.
Yeah.
And there's something really fascinating that happened via social media, is because with, Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people are like they're gender non-conforming people. Like they're trans or queer people. They are missing, they are murdered, they are raped, they are sexually assaulted, they are harassed, bullied, beaten, whatever, at such an exponential rate above literally every other group of people. And a lot of it has to do with, like, proximity to where they live, right? So they live on reservations. There's not cameras. Lots of times reservations are in the country. You know what I mean? Like, going by moonlight, bitch, we're from the country. No. So imagine if you were at someone's house walking home and you're drunk. How easy is it for you to be picked up? And that's like so many of these girls and people's story is that's what happened to them. But and cops don't do anything. The federal government hasn't really done anything. And there's hundreds upon thousands of women missing. And girls and Two-Spirit people. What social media has done, maybe you've seen it, is like the red handprint over the mouth and nose.
Yeah.
That is like symbolism for MMIW. And TikTok specifically has really blown up MMIW. So it's become not just, it's trending, which is kind of a disappointment, but it's also pushing awareness. It's getting people to understand. And TikTok and TikTok activists have done more for the MMIW movement than any law enforcement or government organization has ever.
Disappointing.
Isn't that fucking insane? And there are some things that are disappointing to see on TikTok. White girls smiling and putting a red handprint on their face and like saying mocking things. It's really, really disappointing and gross. But I'm glad that social media is being used for good.
Interesting that you bring that up because one of the people I wanted to talk about, her name is, and I'm probably going to mispronounce part of her name. Her name is Isabella Ayukli Cornell.
Okay.
So Isabella, in 2018, wanted to make a statement with her prom dress.
Ooh, yeah.
So she had this red prom dress made.
Okay.
And specifically to make a statement about missing and murdered Indigenous women. And so she had the entire top of the dress made in this pattern that is... The pattern is specifically an indigenous pattern that... Whatever. I'm just going to read this because it was... she used her prom dress. I can't speak today for some reason. I had all my teeth pulled this morning.
You stroke and you've been drinking.
Yeah, that's it. To raise awareness about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. According to the Department of Justice, American Indians and Alaskan Natives are the 2.5 times more likely to experience violent crimes and at least 2 times more likely to experience rape or sexual assault crimes in comparison to other ethnicities. Experts believe that even more crimes go unreported. In 2019, the U.S. began federal investigations into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. So she chose a red prom dress because red represents the movement to end the crisis. She has been part of the movement since she was a teenager. She also is a member of Matriarch, which is an organization that works to create a safe space for Native women experiencing violence.
Yeah.
She asked the dress designer, Della Big Hair Stump, who was Crow, to include a cultural design on the top as well. The diamond pattern represents the diamondback rattlesnake.
Love it.
The Choctaw Nation considers the rattlesnake, who protected the crops, an important relative. Cornell said, today and always we remember and honor the missing and murdered Indigenous women. They are forgotten. Bring them justice and bring them home.
Yep.
So I just thought that was interesting that, that was one of the things you were talking about, because that was one of the women who was on my list of important women who right now, so not women in history, but women right now, who's actually doing something. And this is a teenager.
Yeah.
Well, she's actually, I think, 20 now, 21. But as a teenager, she has been part of this movement since early high school. Yeah. And has made a statement at her prom.
I love that. There is an activist... there she is. Her name is Autumn Peltier, and she's French. She's Canadian. She's Indigenous Canadian, First Nations. She's from the Anishinaabe, Indigenous rights advocate for the Wikwemkong First Nation of Ontario, Canada, and she is the chief water commissioner of the Anishinaabe Nation, and she has been since 2019. Her grandmother, her mother were the water chiefs of her tribe, and that means the reason being is because they went to, sister tribe when she was younger for celebration, for powwow, for ceremony. And there are signs by their rivers that say, toxic, don't drink, don't swim in, don't play in. And she's all, as a kid, was super confused. But her mom and her grandmother were very active in activism and in water rights and water safety. And they passed it down to her, and she was elected by the chiefs of the nation. And so she has gone to, and she's 20? Oh, she's 19. She's 19, yeah. She's gone to different conferences and different, government outreach kind of organizations and talked about it. And she has been, YouTube, Instagram. She was in, Teen Vogue. She's been all over. And so I think that's really cool. And so when people think well, I'm just a kid, or I am young, or whatever, I don't have any impact. This girl started when she was 14. Yeah. As the chief water commissioner of her fucking nation. That's insane. And there's a lot of young Indigenous activists. A lot of them. And I think I love seeing it. I think it's brilliant because we're not going to be here forever. We're going to need them young people to do the shit. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it shows to me that these young Indigenous people are being raised to understand, the crisis of what's happening with nature, what's happening with ecological issues, and tying that to racism, sexism, poverty, capitalism. Being able to confront all of it at one time and understand how it's all interconnected. And I think that's something that a lot of activists haven't really done wholeheartedly, is connect everything. Why oppression of Black people is connected to capitalism, or how all of these things are interconnected. And bringing down one means you have to bring down all of it, right? You can't just bring down racism without bringing down transphobia, without bringing down, anti-migration kind of rhetoric. You can't bring it down without bringing down capitalism, because they're all super intertwined. Yeah. It's like having a cancer. Do you know what I mean? And that tumor spreads and then wraps around everything else. You need to cut it all out. You can't leave a part of it. And so I love seeing people who, especially young Native people, who are looking at the world through such an intersectional lens and being like, all of this is interconnected and it matters and we need to find a way to combat it. Because if not, our people will further die and the planet will die. And I think it's just, young activists are super inspiring to me, you know?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, because like I think of Greta Thunberg.
Mm-hmm. Turmeric?
Greta Thunberg.
Yep, I thought you were in
Turnberg.
I almost went Greta Gerwig.
Greta Gerwig. I like her too.
I love her. Yeah.
Greta Thunberg. Yeah, she's very spicy.
Yeah.
I love her.
Yalla.
Shut up.
You shut up.
I actually want to talk about this, someone I am going to reach back into history for.
Oh.
Dr. Susan Lafeche.
Okay.
Picoult.
Reach all the way back there.
I'm reaching way back because she was very important in history.
Doubt it.
No, she was. She broke barriers as a woman doctor in the 19th century. She was born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska, and on the reservation. At age 14, she left home to continue her schooling.
Okay.
Attending the Elizabeth Institute in New Jersey and later Hampton Normal. I love this called Normal. It's the Normal.
Mm-hmm.
Normal and Agricultural Institute in Virginia, now Hampton University. She continued her education at the Women's Medical College in Pennsylvania and graduated a year early and first in her class. And at 24, she returned home and became the only doctor for more than 1,200 people across 400 miles.
That's fucking insane.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
She made house calls on horseback and later by buggy across 400 miles.
Yeah.
That is crazy to me.
Yeah.
After she married Harry Picot and had 2 sons,
Okay.
she sometimes brought her children with her on house calls. Toward the end of her life, she solicited enough donations to open a hospital on the reservation in Watt Hill, Nebraska.
Okay.
That's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
In a time when that just wasn't happening. 1, a woman doctor. 2, an indigenous woman doctor. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's so awesome.
That's insane to me. I do want to highlight this woman. She's an author, an economist, environmentalist, writer, and she is known for her work on tribal land claims and preservation, as well as like developing things that are sustainable, right? Her name is Winona LaDuke. She is from, her dad's name is Sun Bear, and they are from the White Earth Reservation in Minnesota. I read a book of hers that almost devastated me, and I don't know if I was going to be able to continue on. It's called All Our Relations, and it was devastating because it goes over. It could have been that's right. Sorry. Because there's 2 books around her. The other one was The Militarization of Indian Country. And so one of them talks about, it goes around all these different reservations and nations around North America. And talks to the tribal people about what has happened to their land, to their water, to whatever, their air supply, based on how the nations, like US and Canada, have industrialized around them. We built, this whatever factory that's on this river that supplies indigenous people with fish or water. And so she goes around and she does all of this discussion and work with these people, but some of it is so disheartening that it feels like there's no point, because like I'm going to get all of this very wrong, but tribe, Canada, eastern side of Canada, there's like very close to the reservation is this huge factory that produces doesn't matter. But they're poisoning their water and have been for decades, right? But like at some point, when shit gets so poisoned, the water's poisoned, the groundwater's poisoned, the earth is poisoned. Like, what do you do now? Do you know what I mean? And it will take how long to even just sterilize that to fix it? And so these people are getting lead poisoning. These people
like what they're going through in Flint.
Exactly. Very, very similar. And this is happening to so many tribes internationally between Canada, Mexico, and the United States. Mexico's harder because they didn't keep track of it like they did in the US and Canada. But it's just all of these tribes, all these people who just live off nature and industrialists and capitalists come in are just like, well, this looks like a moneymaker. You know, let's put this right here on the water. Let's just pollute their air. Let's just make sure they can never grow crops here again. Like, and maybe that wasn't their first thought, but bitch, people live here. You know what I mean? People live right down the fucking street, and you're going to act like you can just poison all of the nature and expect them to be okay. But it's just the indifference towards human life, and specifically indifference towards human life that doesn't look like yours. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, because so much of it, I mean, I remember watching something, it was specifically about Henry Ford making his factories and stuff. And it was like, just the waste runoff going directly into the river.
Yeah.
It was like, what?
Awful.
Yes, he was a horrible human being. Yeah. But it was like, and it was common for factories for the runoff of waste to go directly into the river.
Girl.
Because, you know, it doesn't matter. It's whatever. We're making bajillions of dollars.
Right.
Who cares?
Who cares about the earth?
And it's like, and if it's destroying stuff that goes to those native people, who cares?
We wanted them gone.
We don't like them anyway. And it was like, but this is all important, and this will affect you, and it will affect your children, and it will affect, you know, whatever. And I was watching a thing the other day, and it was talking about how these companies are now having to go through and clean up shit that they were like maybe forgot they even had, the messes that they had made, and that pesky Erin Brockovich.
Oh, I hate her.
Is still causing trouble because she's like,
what the fuck is this?
you know, this mess here that you forgot you even made is still making people sick. It's still, people are dying. Children are, you know, have lead poisoning and whatever. And it's like,
have cancer at birth.
This is off topic, but it's about that. I'm watching this show called Mysteries of the Abandoned. And the one that I watched that I found the most disturbing, it was this town that the entire town is abandoned because they were doing this mining, and they were mining, I don't even remember now what they were mining, but it was some kind of mineral mining. Okay. But what was left over, as they were mining, the stuff was left over that they called chat.
Okay.
And it looks like pea gravel, but it's not.
Yeah.
But and then but the chat would be piled up outside the mine, like up on top of the ground, and kids played on it, and it's piled up everywhere. They would go have their barbecues on it, whatever, and it was everywhere.
Okay.
Well, it's toxic.
Oh god.
Because shit was, as it rained. Then this, you know, it was leaking into everywhere and it was making everything toxic. Yeah. And they found out that 40% of the young people had lead poisoning.
That's crazy.
40%. And so they had to literally move everyone out. And people were going, well, I'm not moving. This is my hometown. This is where I live. It's like, your children are dying. You know, everyone is being poisoned. And the people were still like, but it wasn't until sinkholes started appearing because they had mined the shit out of everything underneath their houses.
That's horrifying.
And things started sinking into the ground. And they're like, you gotta go.
Oh my god. That is so horrifying. Sinkholes are one of the scariest things in the world to me. Because when's it going to pop up?
But it was like, they're just putting all this without anybody going, is this dangerous? Who cares?
Yeah. Well, girl, you know, obviously, back in the day, too, people that give
But this wasn't that long ago.
Really?
No. This was in the 60s.
Was smoking still bad for you in the 60s?
No, smoking was good for you.
Right, so my point is people
well, and smoking was great for you then. In fact, doctors recommended it.
So silly. So silly. What was I going to say?
In fact, you could smoke while you were working at the hospital.
Well, girl, the fact that you could smoke everywhere is weird as shit to me.
Yeah.
On airplanes, in buildings, like...
Weird. In the hospital.
Weird. Don't get me wrong. I've been to a smoking room, the one that's in Las Vegas airport, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what kind of witchcraft is this?
Well, the fact that you can still smoke in the casinos.
I know, I love that. That's so silly to me, because I just imagine old women with their little, with their shoe polish dyed hair, and their... Yeah, and they've been smoking a pack a day since birth.
Honey, you're not even playing bingo.
I know.
Bingo!
Gavin showed me something the other day that was like, it was antiquated, 1950s maybe, but like, what to do with the oil after you do an oil change in your car.
Drink it?
No. They would dig a hole in their yard, fill it full of gravel, and pour the oil in. And they said, and by the time you need to do your next oil change, it'll be gone. Like it just like the tooth fairy came and picked it up, bitch.
Where'd it go? It didn't go nowhere. It just magic.
It just witchcraft. No, obviously absorbed. These people are like, yeah, Jesus is just taking it home. Like, I don't understand what your thought is. Where do you think this liquid is going?
Well, then we probably shouldn't talk about the fact of all the radioactive waste that is just buried in the desert.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't leak, by the way. It stays nicely contained in all those barrels out there.
Yeah.
It'll never leak out.
In the desert where everything is getting like petrified by the sun, I just don't understand the thought process of like that. You just, and
it's not a problem.
Since industrialization, really just looking at the earth as something that we can trash and it'll be fine. Yeah. The fuck is wrong with you?
We are like a plague of locusts.
You know, and there was, during the pandemic, when it first started, and people would say, I hate seeing people say, like, people are the real problem, people are the real disease, or whatever it is. And I'm like, we kind of are.
Yeah.
This earth, let me tell you something. The plants, the animals, the dirt, the rivers, the mountains, everything would still be here and happen whether we were here or not. If we all just went extinct and we got raptured, all humans one day, do you think the birds are going to wake up and be like, oh no?
R.
Yeah, do you think anything is going to give a shit? No. One day they'll just be sweet embrace of nature once again and humans won't fucking be here.
Well, my theory, as a scientist,
right? I don't care.
Who doesn't know how science works, but I'm a hairologist.
You're a hairologist. You do chemical things.
Right. I believe with all of my heart that one day the earth is going to kill us all.
Yeah.
Whether that be by freezing us, cooking us, whatever. Right. But it's going to kill us all. And then it's going to just heal.
Yeah, girl.
It's going to go, okay, we got rid of all these assholes and been trying to kill me for all these years, and now I can heal.
Yes.
And things will grow, animals will repopulate, whatever. The seas will cool back down.
Yep. Well, I just feel like the arrogance of humanity is so insane to me. Like the fact that we have hunted shit to extinction and don't think that's sad even in the slightest because it's an animal or a fish or a dodo bird.
It's just some dumb animal.
But do you know what I mean? Like, and I just...
Yeah, and those things can never come back.
No, you can never make it come back. Granted, if science gets far enough, we can clone it. But here's what I'm going to say to you. Why should we have to clone it? Like, that's the thing, is you're killing things that can never be brought back. You're ruining habitat. You're ruining, like, ecosystems. And you just don't care. And that is so... And the fact that it has become a political stance to care about the environment is weird. Everyone should care.
It's stupid.
Because if it all freezes or burns, nobody is safe.
No.
You know what I mean?
No. I do.
And all these people who do dumb fucking shit like this or who are supportive of ignorant beliefs or hate whatever, your children are going to grow up to hate you. Or your grandchildren are. And if that's something you want to live with, then do that. That's why all these politicians who talk out their ass and say hateful fucking shit about people, wait until your grandchild is trans. You know what I mean? Wait until you have a black grandchild. Wait until... Whatever. You know what I mean? Like, your family will hate you. Your legacy is going to be an embarrassment.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. As the old saying goes, one day all your chickens will come home to roost.
Won't they, though? And I can't wait.
All right. Well, while you're waiting for your chickens to come home to roost, we gotta go.
Okay, bye.
Because, it's that time.
Now
and
it's
we've
time.
said all the things. And we actually haven't said half the things I wanted to say because I have a whole list here. But that's okay.
But we have a month of this.
We do have a month of this. And so, we're going to go, but if you would like to, like my gorgeous sister Linda, if you would like to send us something, send it at itwouldseemasthough@gmail.com, and we will read it out loud. And if you don't want me to read out, start the letter with,
Don't read
not
that.
read out loud.
If you read it
because I'm a dumbass, and if that's in the middle, I won't see it or something.
Because she doesn't know how to proofread.
Right,
y'all.
she don't know how to proofread because she didn't go to school. Actually, she went to YC High, so
basically you learn the ABCs.
That's my excuse.
That's it.
That's
why all you can read is picture books and coloring books.
That's right. If it doesn't have pictures, I can't do it.
What's the story even?
I don't know.
Yeah, right?
I don't know. But we'll be back next week for more of this nonsense, because we're getting awfully close to season 3 of It Would Seem As Though. So thank you for your support.
I can believe
it. We're also getting close to Christmas holidays.
And I've already done Christmas shopping, bitch.
I know. You believe it?
I can believe it.
I can believe it. Bye.
Bye.
It would seem as though.